Hey everyone, welcome to AE4. I'm Brody.
I'm Luis.
I'm Magno.
Alright, let's get into the news. This information was taken from the 4th of this month until today, which is March 25th, 2019. So, let's start with the U.S. Senator Ron Paul of Kentucky? Kentucky, right? Yeah. Proposed a bill to declare victory in Afghanistan and give each veteran of the global war on terrorism $2,500 as compensation, I guess, for serving. He claimed that the $7 billion payout to the veterans would save money compared to the $50 billion spent on operations in Afghanistan every year. So that's an interesting concept. One thing about this that's unclear is who would get the money, right? So there's a difference between guys who served in Iraq or Afghanistan and then people that served in the global war on terrorism, quote unquote. So like if you get the global war on terrorism, the GWAT Expeditionary Medal, would you get that $2,500? Now, having that medal doesn't necessarily mean you served in Iraq or Afghanistan or any other hotbed for the GWAT in combat or any other capacity. So, for instance, all three of us have the GWAT medal, but none of us have seen combat. So
everybody gets a GWAT medal though, doesn't it? And then get a GWAT and the GWAT X.
Yeah, that's right. So there's the GWAT,
which everybody
medal,
gets,
which everyone gets for joining during the global war on terrorism, and then there's the GWAT Expeditionary Medal, which is what you get for deploying to an area that's part of the global war on terrorism, right? So all three of us went to Kuwait the first time, and then these two went to Iraq the second time, but none of us have seen combat, even though we have the GWAT Expeditionary Medal. So one thing that's unclear is, would people like us get that, even though we've never seen combat? Or would it be strictly for dudes in Iraq, Afghanistan, Philippines, Somalia? There were some GWAT deployments there, believe it or not, but yeah, it's really unclear as to who would get it.
I mean, I wouldn't mind $2,500 from the government.
Well, we got to be realistic about this. It's
a lot of money.
This is not going to pass. Well, it's a lot of money, but what he's saying is the payout to veterans would cost about $7 billion, as opposed to the $50 billion that's spent every year in Afghanistan still. But realistically, I seriously doubt this is going to pass, just due to the politics involved. Ron Paul does not have many friends among his colleagues, just being perfectly honest. But yeah, something interesting, something to keep an eye on.
I'm sure they only mean like OEF and OIF veterans, probably.
Well, probably, but that's something you have to be clear about, right? Because if you don't specifically state that, then in theory, like, we could get $2,500, even though we've never seen combat. So, I think on the last one we talked about the USS Truman being retired. It's the aircraft carrier, and retiring that would bring the carrier force from 11 to 10. And this is basically happening so to save money, and so the Navy could get 2 more carriers that they just signed a contract for. So Representative Rob Whitman is arguing that retiring the Truman will affect naval readiness across the world. So just because the Navy plans on retiring the Truman doesn't mean it's going to happen. It sounds like they're already getting pushback from Congress, and Congress does have the power to stop the Navy from doing that. As an example, the Air Force I mean, for decades at this point, has tried to retire A-10 Thunderbolts, and Congress isn't letting them do it. So just because a branch wants to get rid of a certain piece of equipment, it doesn't mean they won't get checked on it. So we'll keep you guys up to date on that. Alright, earlier this month, the U.S. Navy reactivated SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team 2. SDVT-2 is the East Coast dedicated SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team. It's been gone for about 11 years, but it just got reactivated. So basically the purpose of SEAL Delivery Vehicle Teams is to transport SEALs from like submarines and stuff like that. So yeah, it sounds like the Navy and the U.S. military as a whole is shifting gears towards more conventional warfare after fighting the global war on terrorism for so long. So, yep, military's switching direction and getting trained for war with North Korea, Russia, China.
You said $50 billion for cost of Afghanistan war, right?
Yeah, per year. Yeah.
So it's been going on for like 17 and a half years now?
Well, so that was that was after we pulled out in 2014.
Okay.
So before 2014, I mean, yeah, they spent a lot more than $50 billion, right? But now that we're supposedly not at war in Afghanistan, it costs $50 billion a year about. But we all know that we're still in war in Afghanistan, so let's not lie to ourselves. So, on the 18th of this month, General Robert Neller, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, wrote a memo to Secretary of the Navy Richard Spencer. In that memo, he wrote that unplanned financial burdens, such as the damage from Hurricanes Michael and Florence earlier. Were those hurricanes this year or last year?
They were last year, man. We just started the year. Pretty sure, right?
So, I think so. So, the hurricanes late last year, and then the deployments to the U.S.-Mexico border have forced the Marine Corps to consider canceling field ops in Alaska, Scotland, and 29 Palms unless they get financial relief from Congress. So, the Marine Corps it is the smallest branch as far as the Department of Defense goes, and it also has the least amount in budget yearly. So, yeah, the Marine Corps doesn't have a lot of money to spend, and it sounds like these deployments are taking a toll on readiness. One thing to think about is the Marine Corps is supposed to be ready for these kind of deployments all the time. The entire military is, right? That's a point of this expansive military we have all over the world, is people are supposed to be ready to deploy, at a moment's notice. And I mean, that's what the deployment to the U.S.-Mexico border is, right? It's not a planned thing, but it's one of these things that happens. And the military has to be ready for this. So, is the Marine Corps not getting enough money every year? Or are they not spending this money wisely, right? They have these training ops planned in Alaska, Scotland, 29 Palms, right? You need to train, obviously, to be proficient, but they're not leaving money for unexpected deployments, and they need to, because this is what the Marine Corps is for: expeditionary warfare and deployments, humanitarian aid. So if they can't handle the financial burden of deployment to the border with Mexico, then there's a problem. They're not getting enough money, or they're not spending their money wisely, or both.
It's both, man. We know it's both, honestly. Yeah. Still got Humvees from the 90s, man.
Yeah, that's a problem.
I'm sure nobody's bummed out about doing field ops in Alaska anyway. I'm pretty sure.
Well, I mean, yeah,
Pretty sure
but
Easy
no.
Company could sleep well at night knowing they're not going to Alaska for a field op.
Yeah, but I mean that's a problem, dude.
It is, yeah.
Right? That's a problem because you're canceling field ops that affect readiness, right? These guys aren't getting the training because they're deployed. So, yeah, something's wrong and it needs to be fixed. Alright. Earlier today, President Trump declared that the U.S. recognizes the Golan Heights, which is formerly Syrian territory, as Israeli territory. So if you guys don't know about the Golan Heights, that was taken from Syria at the end of the Six-Day War in 1967. So along with the Golan Heights, Israel took the West Bank and Gaza from Jordan and still holds all that territory. So Israel's occupied the Golan Heights ever since 67, but it's been recognized as Syrian territory. But yeah, the U.S. is saying that it's Israeli territory now, and I'm sure someone's going to follow suit. So obviously Syria's not happy with that, but who cares? Syria isn't happy with a lot of what we do. So yeah. That's about it for the U.S. unless you guys got anything else.
No. Nope, nothing.
Magnum?
No.
Alright. Talk about Venezuela a bit. So, on the 6th of this month, Venezuelan journalist Ali Dominguez was found dead after disappearing on the 28th of last month, his body showing signs of torture. So I think we talked about this a little bit last podcast about police special forces going out basically killing people who say bad things about Maduro, and this guy disappeared last month and he's found dead, tortured a journalist. So I don't think it's a stretch to say that one of Maduro's goons did this. Yeah. We're not going to bring up every time a journalist gets detained or tortured because honestly we'd be sitting here all day. So this is going to be the only time that I'll bring it up, just so everyone's aware that this is a reality and it's frequent. And honestly, if you get detained, if you're a Venezuelan journalist and you get detained by the Maduro government and you end up being released still breathing, you're lucky. Count yourself lucky. If you're a foreign journalist, he probably wouldn't take that risk, right? He's detained American journalists before, journalists from all over the world. He doesn't typically kill them because that would be a bad idea. But if you're a Venezuelan journalist and you get captured, yeah, if you end up breathing, you're pretty lucky. Alright, on the 7th of this month, the country experienced a huge blackout affecting 18 of the 23 states across the country. Maduro blamed U.S.-backed saboteurs for sabotaging the power plants. Guaido blamed government mismanagement and corruption. Guaido accused Maduro's forces of going out and killing at least 17 protesters during the power outages. Now, these outages are still going on, actually. Most of the power within the states has been restored, except for, it sounds like 6 states still do not have power to this day, which is, again, March 25th. On the 11th of this month, Mike Pompeo announced that the U.S. will pull all diplomatic staff from Venezuela, citing the deteriorating situation and the constraint on U.S. policy the presence of diplomatic staff has made. So, initially, I think on the first podcast we talked about Maduro ordering U.S. diplomats to leave, and we ignored it, siding with Guaido, obviously, but now it sounds like U.S. diplomats are leaving. So, why are they leaving? Is this going to have an effect on the situation in Venezuela? Is this going to have an effect on Juan Guaido? I don't know. I personally have no idea. I'm just interested to see what happens. I don't know what you guys think.
Well, putting all the journalists, American journalists from Venezuela,
Diplomats.
diplomats.
Yeah.
They don't want you after what's happening with all these journalists, just getting kidnapped and tortured.
Well, so
any diplomats.
Journalists is one thing, right?
Yeah.
These diplomats all sit inside of the embassy, right? So they're relatively safe. Relatively.
Relatively.
Yeah. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just interested to see what does. And obviously we'll keep you guys updated. On the 21st, so a few days ago, the Bolivarian Intelligence Service, which is Venezuelan intelligence, arrested Roberto Marrero. He's Juan Guaido's chief of staff, and they took him to a prison facility for political prisoners in Caracas. Mike Pompeo said the U.S. will hold those responsible accountable. So, I don't know, man. I mean, that's got to be a blow to Guaido. His chief of staff getting captured, and they got this guy at his home. I don't know why this guy thought he was safe at home, but yeah, if you're one of Juan Guaido's boys, you are not safe at home. You got to be on the run, just like he is.
Is he really on the run? I never actually I've seen videos of him, but always in different places.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. He can't be, at home.
Yeah, true.
Right? He can't let people know where he is for an extended amount of time, right? So we talked about a couple videos, I think, about special forces raiding his house looking for him, right? Yeah. So this guy can't be in one place for too long. All right, on the 23rd, two Russian Air Force transport planes landed at Caracas International Airport, one of them carrying the chief of the chief of the general staff for the Russian ground forces, Colonel General Vasily Tonkoshurov. The other one was carrying 15 tons of unknown cargo and about 100 military personnel. Looks like they were wearing civilian clothing. So, are these guys the Wagner Group mercenaries we were talking about? Are they Russian military? These guys could be GRU, Russian military intelligence. They could be Spetsnaz. It's really unclear, but yeah, I mean, yeah, they weren't hiding it. There's pictures of these planes all over the internet, and they were actually going around before articles started reporting about it.
I would say they're Wagner. So most of them, the majority would be Wagner. Some Intel maybe.
So a few months ago, Russia and Venezuela actually held a joint military exercise. It sounds like off the coast of Venezuela, right? And then you had those bombers in December that were in Venezuela, right? So the question is, are these guys, the Wagner Group mercenaries, here to guard Guaido? Are they here to train the military, special forces, whatever? Are they here to conduct surveillance and intelligence operations? Yeah, who knows? It really could be anything, right?
A little bit of everything, I guess.
And, more guys could be coming. Yeah, that's about it on Venezuela. Alright, talk about Russia a little bit. So we have U.S. Air Force recon planes flying close to Russian airspace, getting escorted away by a Russian Su-57. That's nothing new, right? Just a quick mention. On the 5th of this month, Vladimir Putin suspended Russia's involvement in the INF Treaty with the U.S. So the INF Treaty is the Intercontinental Ballistic Missile and Nuclear Arms Treaty that it has with the U.S. And that's the one that we nullified, right? So all Putin's doing is the same thing that we did, essentially. So, whatever, quick mention. Talk about Turkey on the 5th of this month. Excuse me. Yeah, commander of U.S. European Command and the Supreme Allied Commander for NATO in Europe, General Curtis Scaparrotti, testified to the U.S. Senate Armed Services Committee. He cited concerns over Turkey's plan to buy the U.S.-made F-35 while also planning to buy the Russian-made S-400 anti-air system. General Scaparrotti is concerned that Russia could gain valuable information regarding the F-35's systems through this purchase of their S-400 system. Turkey plans to buy 100 F-35s and already has pilots training in the U.S. at Luke Air Force Base in Arizona. So Turkey has not exactly been a dependable NATO ally recently, and this is only proof of that they want to buy Russian anti-air systems that are arguably not good, and they're Russian, not NATO, right? So, yeah, I think it's a big problem. You either choose the S-400 or you choose the F-35. You can't do both. And honestly, I'd say just let them go with the S-400. Just scrap their deal trying to get the F-35, right? Because expressing interest to go with the Russian anti-air system is already enough. Yeah, I think that should have already...
Man, they have pilots training in Arizona right now?
Yeah.
100 of them?
Yeah.
Like Turkish officers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't the F-35 like one of our best aircraft?
Oh, yeah, it's supposed to be. I mean, depending on who you ask, right? Some people say it's not combat ready, it's a waste of money, and other people say it's a really good aircraft. Obviously, none of us can testify to that because we're not pilots. But in theory, right, in theory, it's the best 5th generation joint strike fighter in the world. But I mean, it's definitely better than anything Russia or China has, or Turkey for that matter.
Doesn't Israel have
85 million
Israel does
per
have
unit.
So,
okay.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, the F-35 program was the most expensive program that the Department of Defense had going on before they started rolling out. But yeah, the first combat sortie for an F-35 actually came from Israel against I want to say Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps targets in Syria. But yeah, quick little mention. Again, I don't think Turkey should be allowed to buy the F-35. I don't.
God, oh man, why are we even allies with Turkey, man?
Well, so one big thing when Turkey became a NATO ally was they let us put nukes essentially at Russia's doorstep, right? And that was a big thing with the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Sure.
Is we had nukes in Turkey, right in Russia's backyard, so they put nukes in our backyard in Cuba. Obviously, that isn't the case anymore, but yeah, that was definitely a big reason for Turkey being in NATO, and
not even that. Turkey is considered EU too, so part of the European Union.
Is it
Are
really?
they?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're part of the European Union.
There's nothing European about Turkish
Exactly.
people, I think.
No, not
I
typically.
don't think so. They're just northern Syrians for all I care.
Yeah, they're part of the EU.
That's crazy.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, if someone were trying to remove Turkey from NATO, it would be that much more difficult considering they're an EU country. But yeah, that's about it for that. Unless you guys have anything else.
Oh, crap.
What?
See this? A new migrant caravan has formed and headed to the U.S.-Mexico border.
Oof.
Oof. It's on the Daily Wire. Bean Shapiro.
You good on Turkey?
Yeah.
Yeah, good in Turkey.
Yeah. All right. Make a quick mention about Chad. In Chad on the 22nd, Boko Haram killed at least 23 Chadian soldiers overnight in the group's deadliest attack in the country. So for those who don't know, Boko Haram is an Islamist terrorist group that originated in Nigeria, I believe, and they swore allegiance to ISIS a couple of years ago. But yeah, I mean, they're pretty much the Al-Shabaab of West Africa, right? They might as well be the same thing. So, quick mention.
For West Africa, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Talk about the situation between India and Pakistan. So, we talked about the whole situation a lot on episode 3, and hopefully we could get that out. We've been having trouble uploading it, but yeah, hopefully we're able to get it up there for you guys. So on the 5th of this month, the Pakistani Navy claimed it turned away an Indian submarine from its waters. India denied this. Pakistan released infrared footage of this confrontation, supposedly, but whatever, it's not a big deal. Also on the 5th, Pakistan arrested 44 terrorists from Jaish-e-Mohammed, which is the group that committed that suicide bombing attack against the Indian policeman last month that really started this whole confrontation between India and Pakistan. So Pakistan arrested 44 of those militants in relation to that bombing. Some of the targets came from an Indian dossier that was passed to Pakistan, and Pakistan said that India has 14 days to come up with evidence for prosecution, or these guys are going to be released, I guess. Nothing between India and Pakistan has really happened since the 5th. It's been pretty quiet, and I think it's going to be quiet until the next situation pops off. But as far as this whole confrontation relating to the suicide bombing and the Indian jet being shot down and stuff like that, I think it's pretty much it. Right? This is typically how it goes with India and Pakistan. If they're not at war, they kind of fire some shots at each other for a few days, and then it dies down for a little bit. So that's what's going on now, and if anything else happens, we'll keep you guys up to date, but probably not. Alright. Anything on that?
No.
Get on with Afghanistan. So on the 22nd of this month, two U.S. soldiers were killed in action, being the 3rd and 4th casualties for this year in Afghanistan. They were conducting a joint operation with Afghan commandos. One of those Afghan commandos was killed as well in the Gol-Tepe area in the Kunduz province. That province is, or maybe not the province, the area is completely under Taliban control. So the first one was Specialist Joseph Collette out of the 242nd Ordnance Battalion, 71st Explosive Ordnance Disposal Group. Second one being Sergeant First Class Will Lindsay of 2nd Battalion, 10th Special Forces Groups. He was deployed 5 times to Iraq and once to Tajikistan for counter-narcotics. So this goes back to that bill that Ron Paul is proposing, right? We're still at war in Afghanistan. People are still dying, and at least one U.S. senator wants to end it.
Man, Kunduz province, that's up north.
Mm-hmm.
About 5 years ago, the only one that mainly operates there is like the Germans.
Really?
Yeah, the German Bundeswehr or something. That's what it's called.
Well, the U.S. is pretty much alone, except for maybe the occasional operation with the British.
Yeah.
But
or Canadian.
I don't know if the Canadians are still in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
I doubt it. They're not in Syria anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because mostly, I know the NATO divided Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
So like each nation. I know the Germans control the Kunduz province, which is like northeastern Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the Helmand, Kandahar, and all that
Yeah.
in the south.
But yeah, ever since the pullout, quote unquote, of combat troops in 2014, the U.S. has pretty much taken all the slack, along with the Afghani security forces. So
Started dying down around 2014, right?
yeah.
Pretty much the start of 2015. That's when it starts. Everyone's like starting getting out.
Well, so the U.S. under Obama had planned on pulling out of Afghanistan for years, right? And they set 2014 as for when all combat troops would be out of the country. It's obviously not the case, but as far as most people who don't really care about this stuff or uninformed or concerned, we're not at war in Afghanistan as of 2014. But again, obviously not the case. Yeah, 2 more guys killed, 4 this year. So far, we're only into the 3rd month, so.
What does that make? Is that like 8, I think?
For this year?
For this year, yeah.
As far as total combat deaths?
Yeah, in Afghanistan. No.
So there were the 4. I don't think there's been any in Iraq. There's the 4 in Afghanistan this year, and then the 4 that were killed in that suicide bombing in Syria, right? It was 2 service members and a couple contractors, yeah. So total U.S. combat deaths this year is 8, I believe. It's only March.
Guessed it right, yeah.
Talk about China. B-52s training alongside the Japanese Air Force over the South China Sea, obviously to piss off China. Quick mention. Those bombers came out of Andersen Air Force Base in Guam. So the thing with Andersen is they're trying to keep a permanent bomber presence in that Air Force Base, right? So a squadron will get deployed, whether they're B-52s, B-1s, B-2s, but they keep rotating squads out to have a constant bomber presence there. Talk about North Korea a little bit. North Korea threatened to suspend negotiations with the U.S. and resume nuclear tests. This happened right after Kim Jong-un returned home from the failed summit in Hanoi. Vice Foreign Minister Cho Son-hui cited Pompeo and John Bolton, the National Security Advisor, for creating an atmosphere of hostility, but said relations between Trump and Kim was still good and the chemistry is mysteriously wonderful. That's a direct quote, and that's weird. Yeah, that weirds me out, dude. Trump and Kim kind of got this this weird bromance going on, dude. It's freaky.
That video
It's
of them together
weird.
at that long table, and like Trump is talking, he's all like, everybody looks so nice, very handsome and slim, and Kim's all like, just looking down.
The guy's got like 8 chins, man.
That's so funny. I love that video, dude.
Oh my god.
I've never been more proud to be an American watching that video, dude. Honestly.
So this is obviously happening after satellite imagery showed construction beginning at the once dormant Sohae test facility for missiles and nukes. So satellite showed these images pretty much right after he got home from Vietnam, and now they're threatening to suspend negotiations and resume nuclear tests. What I don't get is her saying, the vice foreign minister saying that Mike Pompeo and Bolton created an atmosphere of hostility. Bolton, maybe, just because that's because he doesn't trust North Korea, which he shouldn't, right? But John Bolton's a very straightforward guy, right? He doesn't hold back, and he's not a pushover. Mike Pompeo, not necessarily a pushover either, but I mean, I think he's been fairly friendly to his counterparts in North Korea, right? He's made multiple trips over there, and the guy seems like he's very professional, and yeah, he's able to keep his mouth shut, pretty much, and yeah, just negotiate and play nice with North Korea. So her saying that Mike Pompeo created a atmosphere for hostility, I'm not buying that. It's just an excuse for North Korea to keep testing nukes. That's what I think. I imagine you guys believe the same thing, but yeah,
Pretty much, yeah.
yeah. Anyone that were to ask me when this whole thing was going on with North Korea and us, negotiating in the first summit, I've never trusted North Korea, and nobody should.
Did President Trump actually remove the sanction?
No. So that's why the second summit failed, right? Because Trump wanted to talk about denuclearization more, and Kim was getting on him to remove the sanctions, and Trump said, we're not doing it until you get rid of all your nukes and your test facilities. And
like
Kim didn't want to do it.
Whoever does it first.
Pretty much, yeah. So Trump just left. And now North Korea wants to keep testing nukes again. So North Korea and South Korea both expressed interest in jointly hosting the FIFA 2023 Women's World Cup. So what I think the strategy for Kim Jong-un is going to be is he got South Korea's hopes up with the reunions between the families, right, of both the countries, and the World Cup, the Olympics, and just all this talk about peace and denuclearization. I think he got their hopes up, and maybe some of our hopes up too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, any sensible person should not trust North Korea, but, I'm sure there are a few people out there who kind of got their hopes up a little high. But I think his strategy is going to be get South Korea's hopes up high, which I think he's done, and try and make the U.S. look like the bad guys, right? Hey, we want to work with you, right? We want peace or reunification or whatever. But that's not going to happen if the U.S. keeps meddling in our affairs, right? I think that's Kim's strategy, and I think it's a good one. And I think it might work. Maybe not long term, but short term. Short term, I think it'll work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they want to jointly host the FIFA 2023 Women's World Cup together.
Honestly, I didn't even know that was a thing. Not to be fucked up, but I never heard of that.
I didn't either.
I never heard of it. I've heard of the regular like World Cup, but in the Women's World Cup, like I don't know, I've never heard of it.
Yeah,
It's weird.
So on the 22nd of this month, North Korea pulled out of the Kaesong liaison office after the U.S. Treasury placed two sanctions onto Chinese companies for doing business with North Korea. So, this Kaesong liaison office is actually on the North Korean side of the border, right? And they have a couple of these, I think, on the DMZ, right? Officials from both the countries meet and they talk about whatever. But this one is on the North Korean side of the border, right? And it sounds like this one is fairly new. North Korea said that South Korea is allowed to stay in the office, which I don't know what that would do. But obviously they blame the U.S. for slapping in these sanctions on the two Chinese companies. The sanctions were actually removed by Trump after this happened because they were not placed by Trump. They were placed by the Department of the Treasury. So, relations between North Korea, South Korea, and the U.S. is interesting. We will keep you guys up to date. Yeah, I don't know what you guys think, but I think my opinion on Kim's strategy is pretty solid. I think it's a good strategy.
We'll find out soon enough.
Yeah, maybe. I mean it makes sense. It makes sense because U.S. isn't going to remove sanctions until North Korea gets rid of their nukes. North Korea doesn't want to get rid of their nukes, right? Because that's the only thing they have.
Yeah, that's the only thing they got against us.
All they have is nukes, bodies, and like a few AKs from like the 50s. You know, honestly, nukes are all they got, right? That is the only leverage they have over anyone is nukes. And if they get rid of that, they have nothing.
They got that from the Soviets, right?
Nukes?
Did they?
I don't know. I mean,
Sure
maybe they got
prototypes. They got the prototypes.
Maybe they got
copies.
That's why they don't work.
some of the science behind it, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
or China, probably more realistically, right? I mean, the Soviet Union had a decent relationship with North Korea, but China has a good relationship with North Korea, right? Back then, China and Russia, or the Soviet Union, didn't care for each other too much. They kind of had a bad relationship, but China's right there. Yeah, I think it's a solid strategy. If North Korea gets rid of their nukes, they're gonna have nothing. Then, if the U.S. is at their doorstep, they won't be able to do anything either. They need to turn South Korea against the U.S. I'm not saying that's gonna work long term, but I'm saying that it might sway some opinions short term as far as South Korea goes. Yeah.
Could you imagine all-out nuclear war? We'd be screwed. San Francisco would get hit.
Probably be dead.
San Francisco would get hit, definitely.
Yeah, you would be dead.
Yeah. Oh, because I'm brown?
No, because you're like right across the bridge.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Major cities would get hit first.
Yeah. It would make more sense to go after San Jose, honestly. More people.
But San Francisco, it's
more tightly packed.
Yeah, it's more like, it's more famous, You think about California, you think about like Hollywood and like the Golden Gate Bridge and like that Golden Gate Bridge, I guess, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
New York would definitely get hit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Miami.
Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I don't think it'll ever happen, though. I don't know.
Dude, people have been screaming nuclear war since 1947. Who knows? Who knows?
Do we even have shelters out here?
I don't know.
Like nuclear shelters? That was a big thing back in the day.
Yeah, I
For
think they
schools and
they
stuff.
got rid of a lot of them. Yeah, I don't know, dude.
The barracks were nuclear fallout shelters. Remember
So
those
is
signs?
so is what do you call it? IPAC. That's a fallout shelter.
Really?
Yeah.
It's crazy. I know the PX was too.
Was it? No.
I'm pretty sure the PX was.
I don't know.
The barracks were definitely fallout. The comm school barracks, they had like the signs like fallout shelter.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Oof.
That's pretty cool. Big oof. No, the walls are like this thick of concrete. Prisons.
Word. Alright, talking about Israel real quick. The Prime Minister announced that the Israeli Navy can block Iranian oil exports that violate U.S. sanctions, right? So, Israel and Iran messing with each other again. Obviously, the U.S. has a lot of sanctions against Iran doing international business. And theoretically, if Israel was able to block their oil exports, they could really mess with Iran's economy, right? Because oil is obviously a big thing in that region. On the 14th, got 2 rockets launched at Tel Aviv from Gaza. The Iron Dome failed to intercept both of those. No damage was caused, but yeah, that's not good, right? That's a 0% kill rate for the Iron Dome. So I don't know. I mean, it's supposedly a good system, but yeah, you can't be failing like that. Tel Aviv, I mean, that is what most countries would consider the capital of Israel, but regardless, it's a very populated city. A lot of people, and if the Iron Dome can't protect it, then that is a problem. IDF countered with airstrikes, right, on apparently 100 targets, including a rocket factory and a drone development site, and then more rockets got launched because of that. There's been more rockets going across the border since then, but it's kind of a regular thing in the region, so I'm not gonna mention that every time it happens. I really just mentioned this because the Iron Dome did not intercept those missiles, and that's a problem for Israel, especially Tel Aviv.
Not as much.
Alright, that's about it for Israel. And we'll finish talking about Syria, as always.
Was there no casualties for that?
No.
Those rockets in Tel Aviv?
No. Dude,
That's
I
crazy.
don't know, man, but I don't know how, but whenever this happens where rockets get launched
Yeah,
into Israel, dude, like
I saw these posts, but I've never seen any casualties.
People get hurt. They don't like die. It's actually kind of crazy. So there was a rocket attack a couple days ago, right? Destroyed a house, injured like 7 people, but like none of them died. Like the rocket destroyed the house and they somehow all live. I don't know. That's crazy. But I'm good on that. I'm good to finish off with Syria if you guys are.
Yeah.
Alright, so Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which is formerly the Syrian branch of Al-Qaeda, but they've since branched off in recent years. They said they will continue to launch attacks against the Syrian Arab Army and the Russians in the Idlib province and northern Hama province. So there's a ceasefire going on in Idlib with a ton of these rebel groups between them and Syria, but HTS is not included in that ceasefire, so it's pretty much open season on them. HTS is also fighting with ISIS cells in Idlib, right? So HTS is on their own to a sense. They'll ally themselves with other groups if they have to, but not ISIS. And ISIS is always on by themselves, right? If you're not ISIS, you're getting killed, or you swear allegiance. Pretty much, they don't have any allies that don't swear allegiance to them. So like Boko Haram swore allegiance to ISIS, Al Shabaab swore allegiance to ISIS, right? So they are not ISIS technically, but kind of the same thing. But yeah, ISIS doesn't have any allies that aren't under their thumb, pretty much. On the 3rd, Israeli Defense Force tanks attacked Syrian Arab Army positions from the Golan Heights. Those positions are supposedly rarely occupied. No casualties were reported. It's probably just a show of force, right? And yeah, I mean, in theory, those positions could have been used to attack the IDF in the Golan Heights. So, on the 10th, the U.S. launched an air assault along the Euphrates River to target ISIS cells that are not related to this battle in Baghouz that actually just closed up a couple days ago. The Turkish government-owned media accused the CIA, British, French, and Israeli secret services of giving ISIS fighters fake documents to move into refugee camps in the country and to Iraq. So, of course, they didn't give any proof about that. No evidence. They didn't say where they got it from. And yeah, Turkey and the U.S. don't have the best relationship now, which is, yeah, I mean, people still want to let them buy F-35, so I don't know what the deal is with that, but yeah, whatever. No proof. I mean, that's a big accusation for anybody, man. Right? If the U.S. were to come out and say that Russia is giving ISIS fighters fake documents, I mean, that's still a big accusation. You know, you could argue as to whether that's more believable, whatever, but you need to show proof of that. So that's a big accusation. On the 13th of this month, Syrian shelling and Russian airstrikes started up in the Idlib province for the first time since September against HTS. So,
which group was HTS? I totally forgot.
So that's Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. They were the Syrian branch of Al Qaeda before they split off a few years ago, and they're the ones that are really in control of the Idlib province. Right, so if Russia and Syria want to clear out Idlib, they have to go through HTS, which it sounds like they're kind of doing little by little. On the 19th, the Syrian Democratic Forces captured a tent city belonging to ISIS at the center of the village of Baghouz. They captured hundreds, including wounded fighters, their families, so on. That is obviously part of the offensive in Baghouz, the last stronghold of ISIS in Syria, and especially along the eastern bank of the Euphrates. On the 23rd, a couple days ago, the SDF declared that Baghouz is liberated. The caliphate is dismantled, and all that remains of ISIS in Iraq, Syria, and anywhere else in the world is cells. They don't hold territory anymore, and they're not a caliphate, and they're not legitimate. This has been a long time coming. I talked about us not being biased. I don't think it's too big of a stretch to say that this marks the end of one of the worst evils seen since the Second World War. If that's biased, I don't care. I don't think that's a stretch to say. This is a long time coming. This is awesome.
Yeah.
How long do you think before another terrorist group rises up in power? I say 3 years.
Yeah, not long.
Probably,
that's how it works, right?
you said 3 months. I was
8
like,
months.
no, bro. 8 months? 8 months?
8 months to a year.
I say
8 months.
no less than a year and a half, no more than 3 years. You know what I mean?
I think 2 to 3 years is probably a
Maybe after
a pretty
2024.
pretty good estimate, right? Because ISIS doesn't have territory anymore, and that's an important thing to mention.
Yeah.
Is ISIS doesn't have territory anymore. That doesn't mean ISIS isn't a thing anymore,
They're still
Yeah.
right? So ISIS presumably still has the ability to
Carry out attacks.
launch these attacks in France or Germany. They still have the ability to be all over social media, spread their propaganda, right? Influence other people. That's why you see attacks all over the world, even here in America, where, this 19-year-old kid from Arizona declares support to ISIS, right? Because he found some propaganda online and then he tries to stab a cop.
Yeah.
ISIS doesn't hold territory. They're not they're nothing close to a legitimate thing anymore, but they're still a thing. They still exist. They could still kill people.
Whatever happened to the Hoda Muthana, the ISIS bride that was trying to come back to the U.S.? I haven't heard anything about that anymore.
Rejected.
Yeah.
By
I think, was that a thing?
Mike Pompeo.
I think the Iraqi government sentenced a bunch of ISIS brides to death not too long ago. Was that a thing?
I don't know. Maybe.
I saw a thing about that.
Maybe.
Sounds like an Iraqi thing to do. Though.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's crazy. I think there was
hey man, you think the death penalty in America is crazy, dude?
Yeah.
Yeah, try
At least you get the lethal injection. I say to bring back the guillotine to save money, honestly. But no, I know there's a bunch of people that join ISIS of America and stuff. I know that. And I saw this. I don't know if this article was real or not, but there was a plea for all these people, U.S. citizens who join ISIS, to come back to America. And I was like, that's not gonna. Even if it was real, it's not gonna happen.
No. I think we talked about it last time or the time before, whatever. That's going to be a big problem for the rest of the world, especially Western countries. So many people fled Western countries to fight for ISIS, and they're going to want to come back if they're still alive. That's going to be a problem.
So get this. You know the Hoda
Hoda
father
Yeah.
sues Mike Pompeo.
For what? Not letting a terrorist back in this country?
Back in the U.S.
So, it sounds like the Department of State is arguing that she's not a citizen because her dad was a foreign diplomat or whatever when she was born. So she was born here, but her dad was a foreign diplomat. So that doesn't make her a citizen. So,
Really?
Citizenship laws are interesting, right? So let's say you have two people who are legal immigrants, right? And they have a kid. That kid is an American citizen. Let's say you have a couple where one of them's a foreign diplomat and the other's his wife. Whatever, they're here on business in D.C. or whatever. Wife is pregnant. She has a kid here. That kid is not a U.S. citizen.
That makes sense.
Because the parents are not only citizens of another country, but the dad or the mother, whatever, is a foreign diplomat here on business from that country. Yeah, so that's what Pompeo and the Department of State are arguing. Her father is arguing that he was not a diplomat anymore by the time that she was born, making her a U.S. citizen.
Dude, I wouldn't even care if she served in Vietnam or something. If you join ISIS, that's a cutoff. You know what I mean? I don't care. You could be American as you want. You join ISIS, it's done. It's over.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's going to be a big problem for the rest of the world. So, I think did we talk about 400 U.S. troops staying in Syria? on the last
Yeah,
podcast.
we did.
Did we?
Yeah, we did talk about
Okay,
that.
so it sounds like in addition to those 400 in Syria, the 200 in Al-Tanf and the other 200 staying with the SDF on the eastern bank of the Euphrates, another 200 are supposedly being deployed indefinitely to the border with Israel.
It's probably 1-7. Well, as my cousin tells me so far. I don't know.
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe that goes along with the whole declaration on the Golan Heights. I don't know, but yeah, obviously Syria and Israel are not on good terms, and it sounds like U.S. troops are getting deployed to keep the peace or protect Israel or something like that. I don't know, but yeah, that's interesting. That's about all I have, unless you guys have anything else you want to talk about or mention.
No.
No?
Hoda Muthana was my thing. That's about it.
Alright, well, guys, that's pretty much it for AE4. Thank you for watching. If you like this kind of stuff, please like the video, comment if there's something you like, something you don't like, something you want to see us talk about. Share the video if you liked it, share it with friends, family, whoever you think likes this kind of stuff, whatever. Subscribe. Support means a lot, and stay tuned for AE5. Thank you.